I didn't expect the worst day of my life to start with something as small as a group chat message. It was just a stupid meme my cousin sent, something about traditional family values. The kind of thing everyone in my family usually laughed at. Normally, I would have ignored it. Maybe reacted with a thumbs up and moved on. But that morning, something in me snapped. Or maybe it didn't snap. Maybe it finally got tired of holding everything together. I stared at my phone for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. My heart was already beating faster, like it knew what I was about to do before I did. Then I typed, "You know I'm gay, right?" I read it 3 times. It didn't feel dramatic. It didn't feel brave. It just felt overdue. Before I could overthink it, I hit send. For about 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the chat exploded. At first, it was confusion. What? Is this a joke? Matteo, what are you talking about? I sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen like it might bite me. My hands felt cold, but my face was burning. Then came the messages that weren't confused. My uncle. This isn't funny. My older cousin. Delete this. And then my dad. He didn't type right away. I watched a little. Typing. Bubble appear, disappear, appear again. Finally. We'll talk when you get home. That was it. No anger. No denial. Just that. And somehow, that made it worse. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. Instead, I ended up at this small park near my apartment, the one with the broken bench and the view of the highway. Not exactly peaceful, but it was quiet enough to think. Or try to. I kept replaying it in my head, like maybe I could undo it somehow. Like if I stared at the messages long enough, they'd change. But they didn't. Because it was real now. I had always imagined coming out differently. Not perfectly, life isn't a movie, but at least, controlled. Maybe one-on-one conversations. Maybe easing people into it. Not dropping it into a family group chat like a grenade. I let out a dry laugh, rubbing my face. Nice job, Matteo. The thing is, it wasn't like they didn't suspect. I'd never brought a girl home. Never talked about dating. Every time my mom asked, I'd brush it off, make a joke, change the subject. They weren't stupid. But there's a difference between knowing and hearing it out loud. And now they'd heard it. By the time I got home, it was already dark. The house looked the same as always. Lights on in the kitchen. TV murmuring in the living room. It was so normal it almost made me feel crazy, like maybe I'd imagined everything. I stepped inside. My mom was at the table. My dad was standing by the counter, arms crossed. Either of them smiled. Sit down, my dad said. No yelling. No raised voice. Just cold. I sat. For a few seconds, no one said anything. The silence stretched so tight it felt like it might snap. Then my mom spoke. Matteo, what you said earlier, is it true? I swallowed. This was it. The moment where I could still backtrack. Laugh it off. Say it was a joke. I didn't. Yeah, I said quietly. It's true. My dad exhaled sharply, like I just confirmed something he didn't want to believe. No, he said. No, it's not. I blinked. What? This is confusion. He continued, shaking his head. You're young. People put ideas in your head. It happens. I'm not confused, I said, my voice tighter now. I've known for years. My mom's eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Not anger. Not exactly sadness either. More like fear. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. I almost laughed at that. Because of this, I said, gesturing between them. Because I knew this is how you'd react. That's not fair, she said quickly. Isn't it? My dad slammed his hand lightly against the counter, not loud, but enough to make me flinch. You don't get to turn this around on us, he said. We raised you better than this. Better than what? The words sat on the tip of my tongue, but I didn't say them. Not yet. Instead, I just looked at him. I'm still the same person, I said. No, he replied immediately. You're not. That hit harder than anything else. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. It was certain. The argument didn't explode all at once. It built. Slowly. Steadily. Like pressure in a sealed room. My mom kept trying to understand, asking questions that didn't really feel like questions. Did something happen to you? Is there someone influencing you? Are you sure this isn't just a phase? Every answer I gave seemed to make things worse. And my dad. He barely asked anything. He just watched me like I was someone he didn't recognize anymore. At some point, he said, "We won't accept this lifestyle in this house." Lifestyle. I hated that word. I'm not asking you to, I said. I'm just telling you who I am. Then maybe, he replied, his voice flat. You shouldn't be here. The room went completely still. Even my mom stopped talking. I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back. To soften it. To say he didn't mean it like that. He didn't. And just like that, everything shifted. Because deep down, I think I always knew coming out might cost me something. I just didn't think it would cost me everything. I ended up in my room, door closed, staring at my suitcase. I hadn't packed it yet. But I knew I was going to. And the worst part? It didn't even feel like a choice anymore. It felt like the only ending this story was ever going to have. Funny thing is, if you had asked me a week ago what my life looked like, I would have said it was normal. Maybe a little boring, but stable. Now, I was about to walk out of my own house with nowhere to go. And I had no idea what came next. If you've ever read those stories where everything changes in one moment, yeah? Turns out, they're not exaggerating. Because sometimes, all it takes is one message. And suddenly, you don't have a family anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on my bed, staring at the half-packed suitcase like it might magically unpack itself if I waited long enough. It didn't. Every now and then, I'd hear movement in the house. The TV turning off. My parents' bedroom door closing. Pipes creaking. All the normal sounds I'd grown up with. Except nothing about it felt normal anymore. At around 2 a.m., I finally stood up and zipped the suitcase shut. That sound, it felt final. Like I was sealing something off. Not just clothes. Not just stuff. My life. I thought about leaving a note. Something simple. Something that didn't sound angry or desperate. Just clear. I even sat at my desk for a while, pen in hand, staring at a blank piece of paper. But every sentence I came up with felt wrong. I'm sorry. For what? I didn't mean for this to happen. Except I kind of did. I chose this. I still love you. That one was true, but it felt useless. In the end, I left the paper blank. Because nothing I wrote was going to change anything anyway. I waited until morning. Not because I wanted to say goodbye. But because I didn't want to sneak out. If I was leaving, I wasn't going to do it like I'd done something wrong. So I dragged my suitcase into the hallway just after sunrise. The sound woke my mom up. She stepped out of her room, still in her robe, hair messy, eyes tired. For a second, she just looked at me. At the suitcase. Then back at me. You're really doing this? She asked quietly. I swallowed. I don't think I have a choice. Her face tightened slightly. There's always a choice. Is there? I said. Because last night didn't feel like one. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were talking about something fragile. You could just not be like this, she said. That hit harder than anything my dad had said. Because she sounded like she meant it. Like it was that simple. I shook my head slowly. That's not how it works. Then how does it work? She asked, frustration creeping in. Because from where I'm standing, you're choosing this over your family. I let out a quiet breath. No, I said. I'm choosing not to lie anymore. That was the moment something in her expression changed. Like a door closing. Well, she said, straightening up slightly. If that's your decision. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. My dad didn't come out to say goodbye. I don't even know if he was awake. Part of me wanted him to. Even just to argue again. Anything would have been better than nothing. But the house stayed quiet. So I picked up my suitcase, walked to the door, and stepped outside. And just like that. That was it. No big goodbye. No dramatic moment. Just a door closing behind me. The first place I went was Aslan's apartment. I didn't even text him beforehand. I just showed up. Looking back, that was probably unfair. Showing up at someone's place at 7 in the morning with a suitcase and a completely wrecked life isn't exactly casual. But I didn't know where else to go. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. After a minute, the door finally opened. Aslan stood there, squinting, clearly half asleep, wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants. "Mateo?" he mumbled. "What the hell?" Then he saw the suitcase. And his expression changed instantly. He didn't ask questions right away. He just stepped aside and said, "Come in." Aslan's place was small. One-bedroom apartment, slightly messy, smelled faintly like coffee and laundry detergent. I'd been there a few times before, usually just to hang out, watch something, complain about work or life. It had always felt easy. Safe. Now it felt different. He closed the door behind me, then turned. "What happened?" he asked. Simple question. Not loaded. Not judgmental. Just real. And for some reason that made it harder to answer. I set the suitcase down, running a hand through my hair. "I told them," I said. He didn't need clarification. His jaw tightened slightly. "And?" I let out a humorless laugh. "And now I'm here." There was a brief silence. Then Aslan nodded once, like he'd already figured out the rest. "Okay," he said. "You can stay here." Just like that. No hesitation. No conditions. I blinked. "You didn't even ask how long." "Does it matter right now?" he replied. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because honestly? No. It didn't. The adrenaline that had been carrying me started to wear off. Fast. I sank down onto his couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. Everything felt heavy. Like my body was finally catching up to what had just happened. Aslan disappeared into the kitchen for a minute, then came back with a glass of water. "Drink," he said, handing it to me. I took it without arguing. My hands were shaking slightly. "Did they kick you out?" he asked after a moment. I hesitated. "Not exactly." He raised an eyebrow. "They just made it clear I couldn't stay," I added. "Same thing," he muttered. "Yeah. It kind of was." We sat there in silence for a bit. Not awkward. Just quiet. Then he leaned back against the wall, arms crossed loosely. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. I let out a slow breath. "I don't even know where to start." "Start anywhere." So I did. I told him about the group chat. The messages. My dad's reaction. My mom's questions. The way everything escalated. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't need to. It was already enough. Aslan didn't interrupt. Didn't try to fix it. He just listened. Really listened. And when I finally stopped talking, the apartment felt still. "You did nothing wrong," he said quietly. I looked up at him. I almost argued. The words were right there. I shouldn't have done it like that. I should have waited. I should have handled it better. But deep down, I knew what he meant. Still, I shook my head slightly. "Doesn't really feel that way." "Yeah," he said. "That part takes time." Later that day, after I'd showered and changed into some of the clothes I'd brought, reality started setting in. Not the emotional part. The practical part. "Okay," I said, standing in the middle of his living room. So, what now? Aslan looked up from his phone. What do you mean? I mean, I gestured vaguely. I can't just crash here forever. He shrugged slightly. You're not crashing. You're staying. That's not the same thing. It is to me. I frowned. Aslan. Mateo. He cut in, more serious now. You just got kicked out of your house. Maybe don't try to solve your entire life in one afternoon. I exhaled. He wasn't wrong. Didn't make it easier, though. Because the truth was, I had no plan. No backup. No safety net. Just a suitcase, and a friend who opened his door without asking questions. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, that was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart right now. That night, I lay on his couch, staring at the ceiling. His apartment was quiet. The city noise faint in the background. I should have felt relieved. Safe. Instead, all I could think about was one thing. My family was still out there. Just, without me in it anymore. And I didn't know if that was temporary. Or permanent. Because losing your family doesn't always feel like one big moment. Sometimes, it feels like a slow realization that there's no going back. And I was only just starting to understand what that actually meant. The first few days at Aslan's place didn't feel real. It was like I was stuck in this weird in-between state, like I hadn't fully processed what happened, but I also couldn't ignore it. I kept expecting my phone to ring. My mom calling, telling me to come home. My dad texting something short and stubborn like, "We need to talk." Anything. But nothing came. Not the first day. Not the second. Not even a, "Are you okay?" Just silence. By day 3, that silence started to feel louder than any argument. I was sitting on Aslan's couch, scrolling through my phone for the 100th time, even though there was nothing new to see. Same messages. Same group chat, now completely dead. I hadn't opened it again after that night. Didn't want to see if they'd kept talking without me. Or worse, if they hadn't. "You're doing it again." Aslan's voice pulled me out of it. I glanced up. "Doing what?" "Refreshing your phone like something's gonna magically appear." I huffed lightly. "Maybe it will." "It won't." Blunt. But not harsh. Just honest. I dropped my phone onto the couch beside me. "Yeah. I know." Aslan had been steady. That's the best way I can describe it. He didn't hover. Didn't treat me like I was fragile. But he also didn't ignore what was happening. He just stayed consistent. Made coffee in the morning. Asked if I wanted some. Ordered food without making it a big deal. Gave me space when I needed it. Sat next to me when I didn't. It was simple. But after everything that had happened, it meant more than I expected. That afternoon, I finally said it out loud. "I think they're actually done with me." The words felt heavier once they were real. Aslan didn't react immediately. He was leaning against the kitchen counter, arms loosely crossed, watching me. "Maybe," he said after a moment. I frowned. "That's it? You want me to lie to you?" "No, I stopped, exhaling. "I don't know what I want." "Exactly," he said. "So don't decide it's permanent just because it feels like it right now." I looked down at my hands. "But what if it is?" He didn't answer right away. And somehow, that silence said more than anything else. Later that night, I couldn't sleep again. Not because of noise. Not because of discomfort. Just, my brain refusing to shut up. I ended up sitting on the floor by the window, knees pulled up, staring out at the city lights. I heard Aslan's door open behind me. Soft footsteps. Then he sat down next to me without saying anything. For a while, we just sat there. "You ever feel like everything changed too fast?" I asked quietly. He let out a small breath. "Yeah." I glanced at him. "What did you do?" He shrugged slightly. "Nothing at first. Just got through the next day. Then the next one. That's it." That's it. I huffed. That sounds way too simple. It is simple, he said. It's just not easy. There was something about that stuck with me. Simple, but not easy. Yeah. That pretty much summed everything up. The next morning, reality hit in a different way. Practical. Unavoidable. I was standing in his kitchen, staring at my phone again, but this time, it wasn't about my family. It was my bank app. Balance, not great. Savings, worse. I rubbed my face. Okay, this is a problem. Aslan looked up from his coffee. What is? I need to figure out money. Like now? He leaned back slightly, studying me. You have a job. Yeah, but I was counting on, not suddenly needing to find a place to live. Fair. I exhaled, running through numbers in my head. Rent. Food. Transport. Everything felt tighter now. More urgent. I can't stay here forever, I said again, quieter this time. Aslan didn't argue immediately. Instead, he took a sip of his coffee, then set the mug down. Mateo. I looked at him. You're not a burden. I didn't say I was. You're thinking it. I hesitated. Because yeah. I kind of was. He walked over, leaning against the counter across from me. If the roles were reversed, would you let me stay? He asked. Of course. Would you keep track of how many days I've been there? No. Would you expect me to have everything figured out in less than a week? I shook my head slowly. Then why are you doing that to yourself? I didn't have a good answer. That afternoon, I decided to get out of the apartment for a bit. Clear my head. Or at least try to. I ended up walking without a real destination, hands in my pockets, earbuds in but no music playing. Just noise. People passing by. Cars. Life moving like nothing had changed. Which was weird. Because for me, everything had. At some point, I found myself in front of a small grocery store. The kind I used to go to with my mom when I was younger. I hadn't even realized where I was going until I was already there. I stopped. Stared at it for a second. And then, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped. Instinct. Hope. I pulled it out way too fast. Not my mom. Not my dad. A message from an unknown number. I frowned, opening it. Mateo, it's your cousin. I got your number from Aunt Sophia. Are you okay? I just stood there, reading it over and over. It wasn't much. But it was the first crack in the silence. The first sign that maybe, not everyone had turned their back on me. And I didn't know why, but that tiny message hit harder than anything else so far. Because for the first time since I left, I didn't feel completely cut off. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply. I didn't know what to say. Did I tell the truth? Did I downplay it? Did I ignore it altogether? Behind me, the store door opened and closed, people walking in and out like it was just another normal day. But for me, this felt like another turning point. Because maybe losing my family wasn't as simple as all or nothing. Maybe it was more complicated than that. And I was only just starting to see it. I didn't reply right away. I just stood there outside that grocery store, reading the message like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. Are you okay? Such a simple question. But I didn't even know how to answer it. Was I okay? I had a place to stay. I wasn't on the street. I wasn't completely alone. But I just lost my family. So, what does okay even mean in that situation? I ended up typing. Yeah. I'm okay. Then I deleted it. Too fake. Tried again. I don't know. Deleted that too. Too honest. I let out a quiet breath, rubbing my forehead. Why is this so hard? I muttered to myself. Because it wasn't just a message. It was a choice. If I answered, I was opening a door. And I had no idea what was on the other side of it. In the end, I went with something in the middle. I'm staying with a friend right now. I stared at it for a second, then hit send before I could overthink it. The reply came faster than I expected. I'm really sorry about everything. People are talking, but not everyone agrees with your dad. I froze. People are talking. Of course they were. It's a family. That's what families do. But seeing it written out like that made my stomach twist. I typed back. What are they saying? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Came back again. Then, some think you just need time. Some are not great about it. But my mom said she hopes you're safe. I let out a slow breath. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some big wave of support. But it wasn't total rejection either. It was messy. Complicated. Real. I didn't realize how much I needed that until that moment. Not acceptance. Just not being completely erased. Mateo? I turned slightly. Aslan was standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets. I hadn't even noticed him walk up. You good? He asked. I hesitated, then held up my phone slightly. My cousin texted me. He raised an eyebrow. That good or bad? I think. I paused. I think it's something in between. He nodded once. That's usually how it goes. We ended up walking for a bit. No rush. No real direction. Just moving. I told him about the messages, about what my cousin said about the whole people are talking thing. Aslan listened, like always. So not everyone's against you, he said. Yeah, I replied. But not everyone's exactly on my side either. Welcome to reality. I huffed a small laugh. Thanks. Super comforting. I'm serious, he said, glancing at me. It's not all or nothing. It rarely is. I knew that. I just didn't know what to do with it. That night, something shifted. Not in a big, obvious way. Just subtle. Instead of staring at my phone waiting for my parents to reach out, I found myself rereading my cousin's messages. Instead of feeling completely cut off, I felt like there were still threads connecting me back to that world. Thin ones. Fragile. But still there. A couple days later, I got another message. Not from my cousin this time. From my sister. I stared at her name on the screen for a full minute before opening it. I heard what happened. That was it. No. Hi. No. How are you? Just that. My chest tightened. I hadn't even thought about her properly since everything went down. Not because I didn't care, but because it was easier to think of it as my parents' reaction. Not hers. I typed slowly. Yeah. Her reply came after a few minutes. Dad's really angry. I swallowed. I figured. Another pause. Then, Mom's been crying. That one hit differently. Guilt crept in before I could stop it. I hated that. Hated how fast it showed up. Like I was responsible for their reaction. Like me being honest was somehow hurting them. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how to. Aslan noticed. He always did. You look like you just got bad news, he said from the couch. I hesitated, then handed him my phone. He read the messages quickly, then gave it back. Yeah, that's rough, he said. That's one way to put it. He leaned back, studying me. You're not responsible for how they react. I let out a quiet breath. I know. You don't sound like you believe that. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure if I did. That night, the guilt hit harder than before. Not because I regretted coming out, but because I could suddenly see the fallout more clearly. My dad being angry. My mom crying. My sister stuck in the middle. It made everything feel heavier. More complicated. I was sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at nothing in particular when Aslan spoke again. You're thinking about going back. It wasn't a question. I glanced at him. I don't even know if I can go back. That's not what I said. I exhaled slowly. No. I admitted. I'm thinking about fixing it. And how would you do that? I hesitated. Because the answer was there. Clear. Simple. And something I didn't want to say out loud. By pretending it's not real, I said finally. The words felt heavy the moment they left my mouth. Aslan didn't react immediately. Then he shook his head slightly. Yeah, he said. That would probably work. I frowned. That's not helpful. I didn't say it was a good idea, he replied. I said it would work. Silence settled between us. Because we both knew he was right. I could go back. Apologize. Say I was confused. Say it was a phase. Play the part they wanted. And maybe everything would go back to normal. But at what cost? I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. I hate that this is even an option, I muttered. Why? Aslan asked. Because it would make everything easier. He tilted his head slightly. Easier for who? I didn't answer. Because we both knew. Later that night, lying on the couch, I stared at my phone again. My sister's messages still open. My cousin's messages above them. All these small connections, pulling me in different directions. And for the first time since I left, I felt torn. Not between staying or leaving, but between being honest and being accepted. Because the truth is, sometimes losing your family doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes, you're given the chance to go back. You just have to decide what you're willing to give up to do it. The idea didn't leave my head. Even the next morning, it was still there, quiet, persistent. You could go back. I was standing in Aslan's kitchen, staring at nothing while the coffee machine hummed. Back to normal. Back to my room. My family. Dinners that felt routine instead of fragile memories. All I had to do was say a few words. I was wrong. I'm confused. It was a phase. Simple. Not easy. You're doing it again. Aslan's voice cut through my thoughts. I glanced at him. Doing what? Overthinking something you already know the answer to. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. You don't know that. He raised an eyebrow. Matteo, you're not the type of guy who can pretend like that. You say that like you know me that well. I do. It wasn't cocky. It was just certain. And for some reason, that annoyed me a little. Maybe I should go back, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth. Aslan didn't react right away. He just took a sip of his coffee, then set the mug down carefully. Okay, he said. I blinked. Okay? You want me to stop you? I know. I just thought you'd have something to say. I do, he replied. But I'm not gonna decide your life for you. I frowned slightly. That's it. He shrugged. If you want to go back, go back. Just don't lie to yourself about what that means. That stuck. Because I knew what it meant. It meant shrinking. Hiding. Pretending a part of me didn't exist just to make everything else easier. I grabbed my phone later that day. Scrolled to my dad's contact. Hovered over it. My heart started beating faster again, just like it had the day I came out. Funny how that worked. Same fear. Different direction. I didn't call. Instead, I opened a blank message. Started typing. Stopped. Deleted. Typed again. Can we talk? I stared at it. 4 words. That's all it took to open that door again. I could already picture how it might go. My dad being cold at first, then softening if I said the right things. My mom crying, hugging me, saying she just wants things to be okay again. And me. Standing there, nodding, agreeing, pretending. I locked my phone. Didn't send it. That evening things felt heavier. Not tense. Just loaded. Like something was sitting between me and Aslan that hadn't been there before. We were both in the living room. TV on, but neither of us really watching. You almost did it, didn't you? He said suddenly. I didn't look at him. Yeah. And? I didn't. Why not? I hesitated. Then I shrugged slightly. Didn't feel right. Yeah, he said quietly. That's usually a sign. Silence again. But this time, it felt different. More aware. You know, I said after a while, this would be easier if they just hated me. Aslan glanced at me. What do you mean? If they were just done. Completely. No gray area? No mixed signals. Why? Because then I wouldn't have a choice, I admitted. It would just be over. He nodded slowly. But it's not like that, he said. Exactly. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. They still care, I continued. In their own way. My sister's texting me. My cousin reached out. Even my mom. I trailed off. Even your mom what? Aslan asked. I hesitated. She didn't stop me from leaving, I said quietly. But she also didn't fully agree with my dad. He watched me for a moment. So you're hoping they'll come around? I let out a breath. Yeah. I think I am. Then give them time. And what if they don't? He shrugged. Then you'll deal with that when it happens. I hated how calm he was about it. But I also kind of needed it. Later that night, I was lying on the couch again, staring at the ceiling. Same spot. Same position. But everything felt slightly different now. Less chaotic. More uncertain. Which, weirdly, felt like progress. You can take the bed tonight. I turned my head. Aslan was standing in the doorway to his room. I frowned. What? No. You haven't slept properly in days. I'm fine. You're not. I pushed myself up slightly. And you are? He smirked faintly. I'll survive the couch. I shook my head. No. It's your place. Mateo. There was something in his tone this time. Not forceful. Just firm. I hesitated. Then sighed. Fine. Just for tonight. His room felt different. More personal. Messy in a way that made it feel real. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling again. Different ceiling. Same thoughts. After a few minutes, I heard a soft knock on the doorframe. I turned slightly. Aslan was leaning there, arms crossed loosely. You good? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. He didn't move right away. Just stood there for a second longer than necessary. Mateo? Yeah? He hesitated. Which was new. Aslan didn't usually hesitate. I meant what I said before, he added. You're not a burden. Something about the way he said it. It landed differently this time. I held his gaze for a second. Thanks, I said quietly. He nodded once, then pushed off the frame. Get some sleep. I didn't fall asleep right away. But for the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was about to fall apart either. Because somewhere between losing my family and almost going back to them, something else had started to shift. Something quieter. Less obvious. And I wasn't sure what it was yet. But I had a feeling. It had something to do with Aslan. Waking up in Aslan's bed felt wrong. Not in a bad way. Just unfamiliar. For a second, I didn't even remember where I was. My brain was still stuck in old routines, my room, my house, the quiet hum of everything being the way it had always been. Then it hit me. And instead of that sharp drop in my chest I'd been getting the past few days, it was just a dull ache. Still there. Just not as overwhelming. I sat up slowly, running a hand through my hair. The apartment was quiet. For a moment, I just listened. No voices. No tension. No feeling like I was about to be called into another conversation I wasn't ready for. Just quiet. And for the first time since everything happened, that quiet didn't feel empty. When I stepped out into the living room, Aslan was already up. Of course he was. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, a mug of coffee on the table. He glanced up when he heard me. "Look who finally slept," he said. I huffed lightly. "Don't get used to it. Too late." I grabbed a mug, pouring myself some coffee. For a minute it felt almost normal. Like this was just another morning. Not the aftermath of my entire life flipping upside down. "You look better," Aslan added. I leaned against the counter. "I feel less terrible. I'll take that as progress." "Yeah," I muttered. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." But he wasn't wrong. Something had shifted. Not fixed. Just steadier. Later that day, I did something I'd been avoiding. I checked social media. Bad idea, I know. But curiosity won. At first, everything looked the same. Random posts. Stories. People living their lives like nothing had changed. Then I saw it. A post from my aunt. Nothing direct. Just one of those vague, passive-aggressive quotes. "Families should be built on values, not confusion." I stared at it for a second. Then locked my phone. Yeah. That was enough of that. "You regret it?" Aslan's voice came from behind me. I didn't turn around. "No. Didn't ask if it was easy." "I know." I exhaled slowly. "It just hurts," I admitted. "Yeah," he said. "It does." We didn't talk about it much after that. We didn't have to. That evening, we ended up cooking. Or trying to. Aslan claimed he knew what he was doing. He didn't. "You're cutting that completely wrong," I said, watching him struggle with a tomato. He frowned. "It's a tomato, not a science project. You're massacring it. It's still gonna taste the same. Not the point." He rolled his eyes, handing me the knife. "All right, chef. Show me how it's done." I took it, shaking my head slightly. "This is painful to watch." "Wow. Didn't know you were this judgmental." "Only when it's deserved." It was stupid. Simple. But for a few minutes, I forgot everything else. No family drama. No uncertainty. No constant overthinking. Just this. At some point, I realized I was laughing. Actually laughing. And it caught me off guard. Because I hadn't done that since before everything happened. "You missed a spot." I blinked. "What?" Aslan smirked slightly, reaching out. Before I could react, his thumb brushed against my cheek. I froze. "Sauce," he said casually. But his hand lingered for half a second longer than necessary. Not long. Just enough. Something shifted again. Different this time. Quieter. But noticeable. I cleared my throat, stepping back slightly. "Right. Thanks. Anytime," he replied, like nothing happened. But the air felt different now. Heavier. We finished cooking, ate, watched something random on TV. Normal. Almost too normal. But I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The way he looked at me. The way his hand didn't move right away. Later that night, I was back on the couch. Didn't take the bed this time. Didn't want to. Felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready to understand yet. I stared at the ceiling again. Same as before. But now my thoughts weren't just about my family. They were about him. Which was dangerous. Because Aslan wasn't just some random guy. He was the one who opened his door when I had nowhere to go. The one who stayed steady when everything else fell apart. The one person I could rely on right now. And the last thing I wanted to do was complicate that. But the truth is, somewhere between losing everything I thought I had and trying to figure out what came next, Aslan had stopped feeling like just a friend. And I didn't know what to do with that. Not yet. I tried to ignore it. That was my first instinct. Whatever that moment in the kitchen was. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Just a normal interaction. A small thing blown out of proportion because my life was already upside down. That made sense. It was logical. It was also complete bullshit. The next couple of days felt off. Not bad. Just different. Like we were both aware of something, but neither of us wanted to be the one to say it out loud. We still talked. Still watched stuff together. Still moved around each other like we always had. But there were these small pauses now. Moments where eye contact lasted a second too long. Where silence didn't feel as neutral. You're thinking too much again. I glanced over at Aslan. We were sitting on the couch, some random show playing in the background. I'm not, I said. He raised an eyebrow. You've been staring at the same scene for 5 minutes. I looked back at the TV. I had no idea what was happening on screen. Okay, maybe a little, I admitted. About? He asked. I hesitated. Everything. He let out a quiet huff. That narrows it down. I leaned forward, rubbing my hands together. My sister texted me again, I said. That part was true. We'd been talking more. Not about anything deep. Just small things. Safe things. But it mattered. What did she say? Aslan asked. She asked if I'm coming back. He didn't react immediately. And? He said. I didn't answer. That question had been sitting in my head all day. Are you coming back? Not should you. Not do you want to. Just, are you? Like it was inevitable. Like this was temporary. What do you want to say? Aslan asked. I stared at the floor. I don't know. Yeah, you do. I shook my head. No, I don't. Because whatever I say, it changes things. It already changed. That's different, I muttered. How? I looked up at him. Because right now, there's still a chance things go back to normal. And if you say no, then that chance is gone. He studied me for a moment, then leaned back against the couch. Mateo, he said, what does normal even mean anymore? I opened my mouth, then stopped. Because I didn't have a good answer. That night, I found myself back at that same spot by the window. Didn't even realize I'd walked there until I was already sitting on the floor. It had kind of become my place. Where I went when my head got too loud. I heard Aslan walk in again. Familiar now. He didn't ask if I was okay this time. He just sat down next to me. You gonna answer her? He asked. I looked at my phone in my hand. The message still open. Are you coming back? I think I have to, I said. Then answer honestly. I let out a quiet breath. That's the problem. Because honesty meant something now. It wasn't just about telling the truth. It was about choosing a direction. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I unlocked my phone. Started typing. Stopped. Deleted. Tried again. Aslan didn't say anything. Didn't rush me. He just stayed there. Finally I typed. I don't think I can come back. Not like before. I stared at it. My chest tight. Heart racing. Same feeling as before. Just different stakes. Send it, Aslan said quietly. I glanced at him. You didn't even read it. Don't need to. I hesitated. Then, I hit send. The reply didn't come right away, which somehow made it worse. I just made it real, I said. Aslan nodded slightly. Yeah. No going back now. There was always going to be a point where that happened. I know. A few minutes passed. Then my phone buzzed. I looked down. My sister. I opened it. Okay. That was it. No argument. No guilt. Just, okay. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. That's not what I expected, I said. What did you expect? I don't know. Something bigger. He shrugged. Sometimes it's not. We sat there in silence again. But this time, it felt different. Lighter. Like something had settled. Hey, Aslan said after a while. Yeah? He hesitated. Again. Which still felt new. You ever think about what happens next? He asked. I huffed lightly. All the time. No, I mean, for you. I frowned slightly. What's that supposed to mean? He looked at me then. Really looked. I mean, your life doesn't just stop here, he said. You lost something, yeah? But that's not the end of your story. I held his gaze. There was something in it. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. And where do you fit into that? I asked before I could stop myself. The question hung in the air between us. Heavy. Real. For a second, he didn't answer. Didn't look away either. Then he said quietly, That depends on you. My heart kicked up. Because that wasn't a joke. Wasn't casual. It meant something. I swallowed. Yeah? Yeah. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was charged. Like we were both standing at the edge of something. Not sure if we should step forward. I looked at him. Really looked at him this time. And suddenly, everything felt clear in a way it hadn't before. Not easy. But clear. Okay, I said quietly. He tilted his head slightly. Okay? I nodded. Then, I closed the distance. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just enough. And when I kissed him, it didn't feel like a mistake. It didn't feel confusing. It didn't feel like something I needed to question. It felt right. For the first time since I lost my family. I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I still had. And what I could build from here. Because maybe this wasn't just the end of something. Maybe it was the beginning of something else. For a second after it happened, either of us moved. Not in a dramatic way. Just still. Like we both needed a moment to catch up to what had just changed. I pulled back slightly, my heart still going way faster than it should have been. Aslan didn't say anything right away. He just looked at me. Not confused. Not surprised. Just steady. Okay, he said quietly. I let out a small breath, half a laugh. That's all you've got? He smirked faintly. You want a speech? Kind of expected one. Wouldn't fit the moment. Fair. But even with the light tone, there was something real underneath it. Something that made my chest feel tight in a completely different way than before. Not heavy. Just full. You sure? He asked after a second. There it was. Not doubt. Just checking. Making sure this wasn't some impulsive reaction to everything else going on. I nodded. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. And for the first time in a while, I actually meant it without second-guessing myself. He held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded back. Okay, he repeated. And somehow, that felt like more than enough. We didn't rush into anything after that. No big declarations. No sudden shift into something intense. It was still us. Just slightly different. Sitting a little closer. Talking a little softer. Aware of each other in a way we hadn't been before. Later that night, I ended up back on the couch again. My spot. But it didn't feel like I was stuck there anymore. It just felt familiar. You can take the bed again, you know. I glanced over. Aslan was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. I shook my head. I'm good. You sure? Yeah. A small pause. Then I added, Besides, I don't think I'd sleep anyway. He huffed quietly. Yeah, that tracks. He didn't go to his room right away. Just sat down on the edge of the couch. Close enough that our shoulders brushed slightly. Neither of us moved away. Crazy week, I muttered. That's one way to put it. I lost my family. I trailed off. Not because I didn't want to say it, but because it didn't feel as absolute as it had before. Or at least part of it. I corrected. He nodded slightly. Yeah. And somehow, I continued glancing at him. This is where I ended up. He smirked faintly. Could be worse. Definitely could be worse. Silence settled again. But it wasn't heavy anymore. You ever think about how fast things change? I asked. All the time. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. A week ago, I had everything figured out. Or at least I thought I did. And now? Now I don't have a clue. He let out a quiet breath. Welcome to real life. I smiled slightly. You're really good at making things sound comforting. I try. I turned my head, looking at him. Hey, Aslan? Yeah? Thanks. He frowned slightly. For what? For not making this weird. For not pushing. For just being here. He held my gaze for a second. Then shrugged lightly. Didn't feel like something I needed to think about. Still, I said. It mattered. That landed. I could see it in the way his expression shifted, just slightly. Good, he said quietly. A few days later, things started to settle into something new. Not perfect. Not resolved. But stable. I was still talking to my sister. Short messages. Careful conversations. My cousin checked in again. Even my mom. She hadn't reached out directly. But she hadn't cut me off completely either. I heard from my sister that she'd asked about me. Small things. But they mattered. My dad was still silent. And maybe that hurt the most. But it didn't feel like the end anymore. Just unfinished. And for now, that was enough. I started looking into apartments. Nothing serious yet. Just options. A sign that I wasn't stuck. That I could build something for myself. But every time I thought about leaving, there was this hesitation. Not because I didn't want my own place, but because this place, Aslan's place, had become something more than just a temporary stop. One night I brought it up. I've been looking at apartments, I said. Aslan glanced up from his phone. Yeah? Yeah. He nodded. That's good. Simple. Supportive. Exactly what I expected. But I caught it. That tiny pause after. The way his jaw tightened just a little. He didn't say anything about it. But I noticed. I'm not rushing it, I added. He looked at me again. Take your time, he said. And this time, there was something else in his voice. Something quieter. I nodded. Yeah, I said. I will. That night, lying on the couch, I stared at the ceiling one more time. But it didn't feel like the same ceiling anymore. Didn't feel like the same version of me either. Because I came out. And I lost my family. At least part of it. But I also found something else. Something real. Something I didn't expect. And maybe that's how life works sometimes. You lose one version of it, so you can finally start living another. I don't know what happens next. With my family. With Aslan. With any of it. But for the first time since everything fell apart, I'm not scared of that anymore. I guess that's a start.